Hello and welcome back to another Minecraft Bedrock Edition tutorial with me, FoxyNoTail, here on a creative version of the truly Bedrock seed, which is seed number 70. And the reason I'm using this seed is there just so happens to be a fortress in a really nice position to be able to do this tutorial. As you can see behind me, we have Steve, who is hanging around over here loading the Overworld. And I just saw a giant magma cube fall in the ocean. We're going to address that a little bit later on. Well, that's fine. And as you can see, we are working with a fortress farm or a coal farm or a skull farm, whatever you want to call it. Basically, this farm will generate wither skeletons, the odd zombie pigman or zombified piglin, blazes, and the odd magma cubes as well. Although we're going to look at a way of getting rid of the magma cubes because we don't really want those. In terms of rates, we're going to look at this quickly. It will very much depend on the fortress you find and the seed that you're on. But this particular one, in 5 minutes, will generate 16 wither skeleton skulls, a whole lot of coal, a whole lot of bones, a whole lot of blaze rods, and a whole lot of arrows as well. And if you look at that in terms of an hour, that is 3 stacks of wither skulls, 38 stacks of coal, 74 stacks of bones, 24 stacks of blaze rods, 14 stacks of arrows, which totals 153 stacks of items per hour, which is just short of 10,000 items. That's quite a lot. That's pretty good going for a farm that is ridiculously simple to build. So let's look at what's going on with this before we get into the tutorial. So in the Overworld, all we've got here is a Nether portal, coming past a couple of buttons and trapdoors and leading to a trident killer with a couple of tridents in there, and Steve here is holding a looting 3 sword. Not that it makes any difference to Steve because I was the one that actually threw the tridents, so realistically I need to be there. And in terms of levels as well, I forgot to mention that this will give you 35 levels in 5 minutes. Again, that will depend on which Nether Fortress farm you find and how much work you're prepared to put into the area. And we'll talk about that now as we head over into the Nether at the touch of a button, just like that. And over here we got Alex. Alex is kicking about here in the Nether for us. We've got a few command blocks. These aren't doing anything particularly special other than just killing off mobs when we want to get rid of them. And we're also turning mob spawning on and off while we're testing the farm. And this is it. This is all we've got. This is the simplest little farm you've ever seen in your life. Just a bunch of Nether portals and a few spawning spots, a few iron bars, and a little bit of rail, and that really is it. If you've seen mine and Slacklizard's recent Truly Bedrock episode, we actually built one of these in this exact same place on Truly Bedrock. The difference here is on this creative world, I've completely erased the surrounding area and the fortress as well, so this is 100% efficient. When you are in the AFK spot here, which is that gold block, nothing around you will spawn. Anything outside of that area, like ghasts, will instantly despawn, so the only things that can spawn are these mobs. And these spawning spots where these mobs are spawning are in the Nether Fortress, and there are particular spots within that Nether Fortress that things will spawn, which is how we are managing to make this farm work. The way it works is very simple. The mobs will spawn on the northwest corner of a block. The hopper minecarts running backwards and forwards will pick one mob up at a time, and they will come along to this activator rail here and throw the mobs inside the portal. When the hopper minecart is heading in this direction, it will actually throw the mobs off in the southwest orientation. When it's going this way, it will do it in the northwest orientation, or the east. I can't remember. Anyway, you need to have your portals on the different sides of the track. As you can see, that one's on the right hand side of the track as we look at it that way, and the same as we look at it that way as well. Now, I do realise I just said hopper minecarts twice there instead of just minecarts. I have a habit of saying the wrong words when I'm doing tutorials. Please just look at what I'm using rather than the words I'm saying, and I'm sure we'll all get on fine. And just a few of these, picking up a few mobs, and this gives us a ridiculously crazy farm. If we fly away so things can start spawning in, you'll see instantly we've got blazes spawning in there, we've got wither skeletons, and the wither skeletons pack spawn as well. But occasionally we do get magma blocks, which do cause quite a few problems for this. The small ones, like you saw there, will end up going through the portals, but the big ones do cause a little bit of a problem, and because magma blocks are a little bit glitchy, they do tend to slide through our trident killer design, particularly in the corners and through the glass. They tend to hop out and then they end up either swimming off or attacking our player down here, which is not ideal. So we really want to get rid of those, and we're going to look at that after we've done the tutorial for how this works. So let's get into it. Let's not look at this too much. Let's just jump straight into the tutorial. So the first thing you're going to want to do is find yourself a nether fortress that has a lot of windows. And yes, you heard me right, a lot of windows. And the reason we need windows is because the windows actually help us find the spawning spots. And if you don't know what I mean, on the Bedrock edition of the game, structures such as ocean monuments and nether fortresses have particular spots where mobs like wither skeletons and blazes will spawn and not anywhere else. So we can predict where they're going to spawn. And the way we predict them is with these windows. Each one of these pairs of windows, in the middle of those on this block here, will be a spawning spot. So it's in the middle of the hallway between those two windows. So like this room here where we've got a lot of windows, we've actually got a lot of spawning spots. Now, if you're not 100% convinced that your spawning spots are the ones in front of your windows, it is possible to use commands to actually figure out where your spawning spots are. I thought you said we were going to get into the tutorial. Well, this kind of is. This is teaching you how to find the spawning spots so you can build your farm around those. There are other areas of the fortress where wither skeletons and things like that will spawn, but the easiest way to deal with it is on these spawning spots, like particularly this corridor here. This corridor here is a really nice long one with lots and lots of spawning spots in there, and if we break through this wall here, it continues around there. So if we had a big simulation distance, i.e. mobs could spawn further away from us than 44 blocks, then we could have an absolutely ginormous nether farm here. But we're going to stick with the bit that we've used before and the bit we used on Truly Bedrock, which is here, because this is conveniently over 4 different chunks, this little area here, and it means there's a lot of spawning spots all in one area. So let's have a look at how we can use commands in a creative copy of this world to find the spawning spots in case we aren't having much luck using the window method. So I've deleted the walls and the area around this so we can see what's going on. This is the floor of that nether fortress there, and I've popped over a couple of command blocks over here that will basically put concrete under the feet of spawning wither skeletons. If we look at the command there, it is execute at e type equals wither skeleton tilde 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 set block tilde -1, so that's the block underneath where the wither skeleton is standing, and tilde and then concrete 1. Now we can use any type of concrete we like or any block we like underneath it. We're going to do that, and when that activates, it will also kill the wither skeleton as well, so it's not going to wander about while it's doing it. And there's another command block here just killing everything other than wither skeletons, so we don't have to worry about mob cap, and we can run that. So if I turn those on there and then we put this on hard mode and we allow mob spawning, we should start seeing things spawning and then instantly dying. And you can see as they're dying, we are starting to get a pattern forming around that area of the spawning spots. The orange concrete is everywhere that a wither skeleton has spawned. And if we look through this little tunnel here, you will see that they are in front of the 2 windows. So one there, one in front of this window here, one in front of that one. And if we leave this long enough, they will all fill up. Now, sometimes you end up with a one that's not actually a spawning spot and it's got stuck in the wrong place. And that's because the wither skeletons do have a chance to glitch off the block if they pack spawn, but we'll look at that later on. But what I'm going to do now is use a program called Cheat Engine to speed up the game so that we can uncover all of the spawning spots as quickly as possible. So here it is, and if I put in a speed of 20 and hit apply there, this was going to speed up Minecraft very much, and you can see things are spawning and dying much more quickly now, and our spawning spots are all uncovering nicely over in that direction. Let's stop that again now and turn off mob spawning just so that things aren't going to continue spawning, and we can see there that we've got a load of spawning spots. Now this one is actually an error. That is because the wither skeleton on here must have just glitched over to the northwest corner too far, but we've got a nice pattern of spawning spots there to work with. We've also got these ones back here, so we could potentially extend this system further back. One there as well. And as you'll see, as we go down here, these are all by the windows. So these are by the windows there. This one's by the window. And this one, as you can see, the whole way round this fortress, all of them are in front of the windows. So yeah, it's a really nice, easy way to tell without needing commands where the spawning spots are going to be. But for real accuracy and to do this properly, if you make yourself a creative download of the world, or get the seed if you're working on a multiplayer server and get a creative copy of that, then you can come and use commands and find out exactly where they are. There is another method to do this as well, which involves basically layers of glass and allowing the things to spawn inside the glass and then checking where they are. We're not going to go into that because I think using these 2 methods, we've pretty much covered what we need to. So the next thing we need to work out is where our AFK spot is going to be, and we really want our AFK spot to be somewhere that we're close enough but not too close that things won't stop spawning, and somewhere that's going to be out over in the open where we're not going to be getting lots of other things to spawn, so we don't have to do too much clearing of the nether in order to make sure things don't spawn elsewhere. So the easiest way to do this is to basically get towards the closest block, which is that one there, and then just go back. We're going to go back in that direction by 24 blocks. So if we find the middle of this thing, which is roughly here, we go back, that's already 2 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 23, 24. So if we stand on that concrete block there, then we are far enough away that things will be able to spawn on this block in front of us here. Now we need to work out what is the furthest distance away from us where things will be able to spawn, or where things will start despawning from. And on this we are using a simulation distance of 4 chunks. As you can see here for this world, we are using a simulation distance of 4 chunks, and that is because this is the simulation distance that is fixed to on realms, and generally it's a good one to work with because although it means you can only have smaller farms, they're a lot easier to manage in terms of things despawning and having to create perimeters, and generally speaking the rates are not much slower than having ones with a big simulation distance. So this is one we always use. It's nice and easy. You can use it on servers as realms as well. So what I've got over here is another command block, and this one says execute at E tag equals X tilde 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 set block, and then we've got the corrects with the last one having 45 next to it, and then stained glass 0. And what this is saying is run this command from any entity that has the tag X, and we're going to tag ourselves with X, so we're going to be the entity, and put a block 45 blocks away from where that entity is looking, and we're going to use stained glass just because it's a nice easy one that things won't spawn on. When I turn that on and then go and stand on this spot here, and I tag myself with the tag X like that, now wherever I look is going to draw a line of blocks that are 45 blocks away, which is just outside of the distance that mobs will be start despawning from. Once I've got a little wall at the back like that, I can remove that tag, go turn off this command block so it's not going to continue ticking, and now we can see how far back we can potentially have our farm. So if we wanted to, we could make use of these spawning spots here, and this one here, and that one there. We could even use the ones that are going to be down here inside this one. You see we've got another hallway here with spawning spots inside the window there. We could use these as well and really increase the size of our farm, but for the sake of ease of use and the sake of consistency, we're going to stick with this little area here, and this is going to be the platform that we use to make our farm. So realistically, the thing you need to do now is go back to your survival world, mark out all of these spots by taking the coordinates and then marking them with a block, and then working on the area around this just to reduce spawns from elsewhere. The other thing you're going to need to do is make sure that any spawning spots that are within our radius are covered up either with slabs or unspawnable blocks, and then we will only have these ones left that things can spawn on. Now, because I'm doing a tutorial and not doing this in survival, I can cheat getting rid of the fortress and the spawning for spots by using commands. You will have to either go round destroying the fortress and the area around here, or basically coming round and putting slabs down or carpets or just something to stop things spawning. And you don't want to just be blocking the spawning spots as well, because other entities such as pigmen and magma cubes and stuff will spawn on the areas in between, and they will also spawn on the roofs as well, so you need to get rid of these ones here. Now, these spawning spots are not just at this level here. We're actually at y equals 60, and these are at y equals 59. There is actually a range that they will spawn on in terms of y-axis. We can actually lift this up by a few blocks or drop it down by a couple of blocks as well, and things will still spawn at those levels, but we can't make this dual layered. If we wanted to have, let's say, a spawning spot there with something on and one there, they will only spawn on the top one and not the bottom one. So there's no point in trying, because you can only have them spawning on one layer. I thought when I was first doing my research on this and doing my testing that we might be able to double this up and have spawning spots doubled up on different layers like that. Now, whilst things will spawn on the top ones, they won't spawn on the bottom ones as well, so it's absolutely pointless. We'll just stick to one layer of this, and we're just going to go round and we're going to slab everything in between these spawning spots and all of the other area of the fortress as well, so we don't have to worry about things spawning. Once you're happy that you have spawn-proofed the area, and that doesn't just include the fortress, that includes all of the areas around where things might spawn within a 44 block radius of your AFK spot. So 44 blocks in all directions, up, down, left, right, as a big sphere. They all need spawn-proofing, otherwise that will reduce the rates of this farm. And once you're happy you've done all of that, then you can move to the next stage. Now, I'm not going to actually do that, because I'm doing this tutorial and I don't have time. But yeah, realistically, all of this should be slabbed or have buttons on or pressure plates or something to stop things spawning. But for now, I'm just going to concentrate on this area here. And with the glass, all you're going to do is make lines next to these spawning spots with the glass like that. And that's just for the minecart tracks to go along. And it's very, very simple. And the reason we're using glass is just because mobs won't spawn on it. Now, mobs shouldn't spawn on minecart track, but they do have a tendency of doing that. So we're going to use glass underneath the minecart track just to make sure that nothing spawns on that. Now, in an ideal world, instead of running things along minecarts and into a portal at the end, we would just have portals along the side of these blocks where the mobs could spawn. Because they spawn on the northwest corner, they would instantly go through that nether portal and to the other side. And that's how the Guardian farm system works. Sadly, this won't work for this farm because the light from the nether portal is just bright enough to block the wither skeletons and skeletons spawning. Blazes will still spawn, and so will magma cubes, but the wither skeletons themselves won't, which means you won't get any coal or bones or heads, and that's kind of what we want the most from this. Now, it is worth noting that when we are laying down the glass for our tracks, it needs to be on the north or west side of these blocks. Basically, the side where the skeletons or the mobs are going to spawn, and they always spawn on the northwest corner of the block, which in this particular farm is this corner here. Now, if we put the minecart rail along this side, it's not going to actually pick the mobs up because they're going to be stuck over here. And the way we're going to stick them is with some iron bars. So we're going to grab our iron bars, we're going to come a block up from that, and we're just going to make a square just on the northwest side of each one of those spawning spots. And now what happens is the wither skeletons spawn in and they're instantly inside that box and they're stuck. They can't go anywhere. Now, magma cubes will spawn above it and they'll pop off, but we'll deal with that later. The blazes will also get stuck in the middle as well. Once you've got all of your cages in place, now would be a good time to work on the portals, and the portals can be relatively close to these spots. We can actually build them one block away from our spawning spots, and the light level will be low enough for wither skeletons to still spawn. Now, if you're a little bit short on obsidian here, you can obviously ignore the corners, and you don't need this to be any bigger than a normal size nether portal. Hey, Foxy from the future here. I just want to say that you should make these portals 3x3 rather than 2x3. That is a much better way of dealing with things, as we will find out later on. What I would recommend, though, is you make sure that the entire area around it is completely spawn-proof. And now this time, we actually want the portals to be on the other side. At this end up here, we want them to be on the same side as our spawning blocks because they will get thrown off on the opposite side from where they get picked up. But at this end here, they actually need to be the other side of the track because the activator rails will throw them off the other way. So we'll put this side just here like that. Skipping forward slightly to demonstrate something, if you've got two portals next to each other like this and your activator rails are in the same place, then you can often find that your wither skeleton will hop instead of into the nether portal like that one, but it can actually end up going through the nether portal out the other side and into the other hopper minecart, and then it gets bounced around a little bit. And what can happen there is it can end up coming back, taking up the mob cap, and yeah, it's not going to be as efficient. The way we get around this little problem is to actually stagger our portals. If I turn that off now, if we bring this portal one block back, then we can have the activator rail just offset by one block and it won't happen. So if you didn't catch how we actually do the rails at the portals, it's quite easy. We bring our glass along the portal, we put a redstone block on the close side of the portal, the side closest to the farm, with an activator rail on there. We're going to put a powered rail the other side facing into a solid block. It needs to be a solid block with a lever on the back of it just to keep that powered, and then just something on top of that solid block to stop things spawning. So again, same thing there, activator rail and a redstone block, a solid block going into that power rail there with some sort of lever or powered device on there to keep that lit. And then we're just going to run power rail along the rest of this farm. And it is important that the rest of this farm is powered rail and not normal rail, because if the hopper minecart bangs into a group of wither skeletons, let's say the wither skeletons have packed spawned in here and there's 5 of them, if there's a group of them, the hopper minecart can hit them and stop. So we need it to be powered rail, so even if it hits something, it's going to bang about, which means we then need a few redstone blocks as well. So once you've got that end in, we're going to do exactly the same thing, but at the other end and this side. This time we're going to put the portals on the other side of the track. So on this side, we're going to do exactly the same thing with the activator rail on the block closest to the spawning spots, going into a powered rail into a solid block. But this time we're not going to put a lever on the back. We're actually going to put another row of glass or something that's not spawnable behind those. And we're going to put some redstone on there so we can actually turn this farm on and off. Because we're going over various chunk boundaries with this farm, it's important that we can turn our minecarts on and off when we're not using it. Otherwise, there is a chance they'll despawn when we come to run the farm. So all we need to do is just put in a redstone line across this system with a load of redstone dust. Bring yourself somewhere towards the middle and just put a lever on there like that, and that's going to activate everything, and that's going to power those powered rails that's on this side. Now, it really doesn't matter how janky your redstone is over here. It's absolutely fine. You can make that a little bit tidier if you want to. It really doesn't make any difference to the quality of the farm. It's just for ease of use. Once you've got all of those in there, then feel free to light your portals, and don't forget to put a non-spawnable block above those blocks there. Otherwise, we'll get all sorts of weird stuff spawning, like magma cubes that are going to get in the way of our system. Now all is left to do is to link up our powered rail across the farm. So bring your powered rail all the way across, and then find a spot somewhere in the middle where you can put a redstone block which will light up the whole lot. And there we go. That is everything all linked up and done. Made a bit of a mess here where I was building around here, so let's fill those holes in there, and that's pretty much it. This farm is pretty much now good to go. The only thing we haven't done is the overworld side of this farm and the system to stop the magma cubes spawning, and I'm going to talk about that now. Future me again. We're actually going to skip past this next section because it turned out after doing a lot of testing that what I was going to put in place didn't actually work, and even though it had worked in one set of my testing, it didn't work for this farm, so we're going to forget it. But in the next clip, you're going to see lots of armor stands in this farm. Just forget it, completely assume that they don't exist, pretend they're not there, you don't need them, and they won't make any difference to this farm. Let's carry on. Now what we need to do is actually get our portal in the overworld synced up with these ones, because we need all of these to sync to the same one. So first thing we're going to do is find roughly the center of all of our portals, which is pretty much here, and then just write down the coordinates of this spot here. So we've got minus 181 by 59 by 372. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through one of these and go to the overworld, which brings us out at this mushroom island here, but this isn't quite the right place. What we need to do is destroy this portal here and destroy this weird one we got floating over here as well, because we don't want these things linking up to where we don't want them. Look, we've already got things that have spawned through this one when we've been messing around with the farm. So now what we need to do is a little bit of maths to work out exactly where we should have our portals. And the maths is simple. We take our X value and we times it by 8 like that, and we get minus 1448. We keep our Y value the same, and then we take our Z value, which is 372, and we times that by 8 as well, and we get 2976. So I'm going to use creative mode to teleport myself to that exact spot, which is under the water here. So what I'm going to do is fly up a little bit, just so we're away from the water, and the closer we are to the Y value, the better all of this will link up. And now what I'm going to do is just use a command to set a block. Alternatively, I could swim down to the bottom of the ocean and I could just pile up with blocks from there, but I don't want to do that because I'm lazy. Boom, and there we go. We've got a concrete block there. Now all I need to do is make a portal. And assuming we've done this right, that portal should now link up with every single one of these ones, and we can check that by going to the 4 corners and just checking that every single one of our portals comes through exactly the same place. So we just tried that one. Let's do this one over here, and it does. Now we'll go to the other end and do these ones, and that one's okay there. And the last corner is this one over here. Let's go through that, and all of those come through absolutely great. So we're going to grab a couple of buttons and put them there, and then we're going to put a couple of blocks in front of those, a couple of blocks in front of those, break the first two and put a couple of buttons there. Alternatively, if you want glass along this wall here, you can use trapdoors. Like so, and all that does is means that when the wither skeletons or blazes come out, they think they're full blocks, they'll try and walk over them and they will fall down into our trident killer without needing to be pushed or anything like that. Then we can just build a wall all the way around this thing, and don't forget we need to put a backside on it as well. And if you are worried about things glitching out, if you just build this up a couple of layers on each side, that will stop anything from glitching through the blocks and going through and popping out like we saw at the beginning of this video with that magma cube. And there we go, we got a big chunky box around that nether portal now with a 2x2 hole underneath. Bear in mind, if we did manage to somehow get a giant magma cube coming through there, it is going to squidge out of that glass at the front. So you might want to just double up this glass layer at the front here and do what you can to try and prevent that. But realistically, if you've got big magma cubes coming through this, there's not a great deal you can do about it. They will find their way through. Now what we're going to do is come down 3 blocks, and the reason we come down 3 blocks is that blazes tend to jump when they start getting hit by our trident killer, and we don't want them jumping out. So let's bring the sides down a little bit, continue our glass down by 3 blocks, and at this point we're going to build a trident killer that is blaze and XP friendly. So the first thing we're going to do is start with a 2x2 square made from solid blocks, which is directly below the tube, and underneath that we're going to come down 2 blocks, we're going to come out 2 blocks, and we're going to stick a double chest in front of that. Now I've used a trap chest just because when you've got items flowing into it, it will stop the hopper sending things in, so it's easy to deal with and count and stop things glitching about a little bit. And then we're going to break those temporary blocks there, and we're going to have a hopper going into the back of that and another hopper going into the back of that. On that last hopper there, we're going to put a little bit of rail with a hopper minecart on top, and then we're going to use some solid blocks to actually create a larger square, which is effectively going round the outside of our platform there. So it will leave a 3 holes worth of gap in the middle around there, and then we're going to put a solid block on each corner like this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put a redstone torch above that hopper there. Don't worry, it's absolutely fine. And we're going to put a lever on that block next to it, and we're going to flick that lever down to turn that torch off. Then we're going to grab a repeater, and we're going to put it on 1 tick facing into that corner block, and we're going to do that on every single corner block. A repeater on 1 tick facing into each one, and then just some redstone dust on the gaps that are left. Now when we flick that lever off, you will see we've got a redstone clock that goes round, and that is what's going to be running our trident killer. So flick that back on again. Then we want to grab some observers, and we're going to have those observers facing down looking at the repeaters like that. And then on top of those observers, we're going to have our pistons facing in towards the center like this. And what this has allowed us to do is have gaps that we can actually put a slab on at the front to collect the XP, because in 1.16 XP from trident killers, if it backs up and doesn't get collected, causes all sorts of lag, which we need to try and avoid. So popping a slab on the front there next to that piston, we can then use our solid blocks to just build up the rest of this thing so that there's no gaps, and then that will stop things from being able to glitch out whilst inside there. And if we flick that on, you'll be able to see that trident killer is running around absolutely fine. So let's turn it off again. Let's continue our wall around there like that. And for the sake of this tutorial, we'll put some more glass in there so we can see what's going on. And then what we're going to do is actually put a platform there next to that lever. This is where we're going to stand, which allows us to do 2 things. It allows us a hole to throw our trident in without needing to break any blocks, and we can chuck a couple of tridents in there if we want to. It also allows us to be able to get direct access to the XP, and because we're a block lower down than that, when blazes get hit by our trident, they're going to get aggressive towards us. They're not going to fly up, they're going to try fly down towards us, which is going to force them into the tridents. Pretty sneaky. Right, let's turn that on. Let's just make sure those tridents get pushed around okay. They do. That's absolutely great. So we can come away from that now, and that's going to work absolutely fine. Our items will end up into that chest there. Now we can actually activate the farm and make sure this is going to work. So you're going to need a friend or an alternate account or a camera account or something like that, because when you try and load this thing from the Nether and come to the Overworld, everything's going to despawn. So this does require 2 people. So I brought in Alex as the alternate account who has now thrown in the tridents herself so that she will be able to use the looting effect on the sword that she's holding in order to get more drops from this thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to go back into the nether. So we're going to disable our redstone here. We're going to put a hopper minecart on each one of those just there like that on every single one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a delay on every other one as well. So when we start the hopper minecarts, they're all going to go off at slightly different times. And the reason for that is just to stop or just reduce even more the bouncing issue we had earlier. It looks like my powered rail doesn't quite reach far enough here, which means I'm going to need another redstone block in there. Good job I spotted that. Let's send that minecart on its way. That should reach all the way along now. It's doing very good. Let's go over to our AFK spot. Earlier on in this video, I mentioned that we would talk about how we stop magma cubes from spawning, but unfortunately during actually doing this tutorial and doing a little bit more testing research, it turns out the way that I thought we could stop it doesn't seem to actually work. Now, a big part of the tutorial that I've actually cut from this video was me talking about getting armor stands on the spawning blocks because that would prevent the magma cubes from spawning. In my tests prior to this tutorial, that did work, but having just done a little bit of this tutorial and just done some rate tests very briefly, we saw that large magma cubes are still able to spawn on those armor stands, which is not ideal because what happens then is they get stuck in the minecarts. The portals are not big enough to send them through, which means we need to make the portals bigger. If we do that, it means the portal on the other side, this one, needs to get bigger, and then we need a system at the bottom to break those magma cubes down into small ones, which means using wither roses, which is all doable, but it's a bit of a problem. It would be nice if we could get rid of them altogether. So I'm going to hop back through. So if you know of a way that actually works, because I got a lot of comments off from my video of doing this on Truly Bedrock of what works, and none of the ways that were commented to me actually work on Bedrock Edition. If you've got a way that actually works to stop magma cubes spawning in the system altogether, I'd really appreciate that if you could let me know in the comments. But for now, I guess what we would have to do is actually make each one of these portals just about big enough to fit a large magma cube through and then deal with that at the other end. So let me show you how to deal with it at the other end. So for the overworld side, we actually need to make our portal 1 block wider, which also means we need it 1 block further back because we need a 3x3 hole for them to fall down. So we're going to bring it back and then we're going to make it a 3 wide by 3 tall portal, and then we're going to go crazy bolstering up this thing with layers and layers and layers of blocks again because we don't want the magma cubes spilling out the other end. And I'm going to go 3 layers on each side of this thing just to really make sure that nothing gets through. I'm sure it still will because this is Bedrock Edition at the end of the day and it likes to do these things to me, but I'm going to try my best to stop that happening. So on the inside of our trident killer, we've now got a 3x3 room up here. The portal has buttons on the front with buttons on the other side, or you can use trapdoors like before. The problem with trapdoors now is that the magma cubes will actually sit on them, which is no good, so really we need buttons. We've got some water over here, which if we get blazes in this point here, it's going to push them off to the middle and down into the trident killer. And we've got some wither roses on this dirt here, which is going to break down the large magma cubes and put them into our trident killer. So if I can get a magma cube to actually spawn a big one in here somewhere, you can see they're already glitching through. There we go. That will end up on the dirt there. It will take damage until it splits. It will try and jump out, but it shouldn't be able to jump high enough to get back through the portal, and then it will split down and it will go down into the trident killer. On the nether side, you can now see that I've expanded each of these portals to be a 3x3. So hopefully now when we get the large magma cubes on the track, if I can maybe demonstrate when a minecart comes past, not a little one, I want a big one in there. There we go. We got a big one and you saw it went straight through into the overworld. Hopefully you caught that on camera. There we go. Another one as well. So they are going through into the overworld now and they will now get dealt with by that the other side. If we go in, we are going to be in there with them. Hopefully you can see, yeah, they are all bouncing down there and they are getting killed by the wither roses, and then they will end up in the trident killer, which is off. And it does look like we've had a few escapees. Let's watch this farm running for a little while and see how it gets on. And there you go. Now you can see this thing in action, working with magma cubes a bit, sort of, kind of. I'm pretty sure I just saw one flop out the back somewhere. There's one floating around over there. Yeah, magma cubes are a bit of a problem. As long as you're protected, they will eventually despawn because they'll end up wandering out of range anyway. So it's not really too much of an issue. And you can see, even without doing any spawn proofing of the nether around that farm, we are getting crazy amounts of stuff through here. They're all going into the trident killer, and all of their tasty drops are going into this chest below, which I've just cleared out, and we're already getting stuff filling up in there. Loads and loads of bones. Ridiculous number of bones. It's absolutely crazy. I love it! So back on the original design, which I showed at the beginning of this video, with my camera account over in the nether, if I enable mob spawning like so, you will see, now that I'm in survival, just how quickly these things start coming through and how quickly I start getting XP. This thing is ridiculous. Here they come. And you'll notice we have no issues with magma cubes with this design. Just because of the way it's set out in the nether, there's nowhere for them to go. They can't get through the portals, and they will only fall into the lava below, which means that they're going to just fall out of despawning range and disappear, which is great because it doesn't affect the race. And there we go. Look at this thing. This is absolutely crazy. As I mentioned at the start of this video, this farm will give you 35 levels in 5 minutes. I've no idea how many levels you'd get after a whole night's worth of AFK, but I bet it would be a whole lot, and it will give you lots and lots and lots of Wither Skeleton Skulls bones coming through there faster than they can get into the hopper. Coal, blaze rods, a little bit of rotten flesh, a little bit of gold, and some arrows, and you will occasionally get a little bit of magma cream as well. So yeah, all round, this farm is absolutely fantastic, and I hope you all really enjoyed it. If you did, please do leave a like. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. Hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!